Welcome to Nordic Welfare Center and to this webinar based on the book Revealing Hidden Potentials. Good afternoon, everyone. For some of you, it's very early in the morning. For some others, you are almost going to bed soon. And for the most of us, it's in the middle of the day after lunch. And out of my window, there are a nice sky, blue sky, and a warm sun. My name is Maria Kreutz, and I am responsible for the deafblind issues at Nordic Welfare Center, and I will guide you through these 2 hours we have together within this webinar. Nordic Welfare Center is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we work with social issues and welfare issues. We have one part that works with disability topics, and within that we have deafblind as a specific issue. Within the deafblind field, we have 5 different networks working with collect and develop knowledge and also spread them, just like today. One of the network is the Cognition network, and it has been existing since 2009. It was last year in August, we published a book, Revealing Hidden Potentials. And after that, we had the first webinar in the end of October, part 1. And you will receive a link in the chat to where you can find that part. It's on our website, so you can go back to it if you haven't. If you didn't participate that time, you can see it now. And if maybe you want to refresh your mind or some concepts, some terms or anything, then you can look at it once again. Today, we have this Humour chapter that we will go a bit deeper in. And then in June, we have part 3 of this webinar series. And I will say something more about it in the end of this webinar. Today, we will listen to John and Jacky, and they will talk about their chapter about humor. And then we will have a short break on 10-15 minutes. And then after that, we will welcome some other members of the network and also authors in the book Revealing Hidden Potentials. We will have a part that we have a panel discussion, but also, of course, your questions. So it will be some kind of interaction between you and the panel. I'm really looking forward to this. With that said, I would like to start this webinar and say welcome to John and Jacky. They will present themselves, where they are working and so on, and all their contribution in the book Revealing Hidden Potentials. John and Jacky from Scotland, welcome. Oh, nice to see you.
Hi.
Nice to see you. It's always just this second when you say welcome, and then you wait for the presenters to put their camera on, and then you feel so happy. I'm so glad to see you. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Welcome to this webinar, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation. I'm looking forward to listen and to think about it, reflect on it, and have this first hour together, and then we will have a short break. So you are most welcome to start. And then you have 1 hour, and then I will get, if you are just talking and talking because you are so inspired, then I just will go in and say, okay, now we have to take a little break. Go on, please.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen first, so this might take a little minute.
It's okay.
And thank you, Maria, for the description of a humorous Scottish man. That is absolutely for other people to judge and decide, I would just say.
Yes, I wanted to mention it. I thought it could be a good start for you.
Well, the check's in the post. Thank you. Okay, are we good to go?
Can you see my screen?
I can. Okay, everyone. Well, yes, as has been said already, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And I hope everyone can hear me okay and also can see the screen. And I'm delighted to be here with you today, and also joined by my colleague Jacky, and we'll introduce ourselves in a wee minute. But a welcome from Scotland, first of all, and some of you might have been to Scotland before and visited us. The main thing to say about Scotland at the moment, despite it being still rather chilly, even though it is springtime, is that the most obvious thing is that the hairdressers and barbers are still closed due to lockdown in Scotland, which is why both Jacky and myself have come dressed up as a kind of 80s revival pop band at the moment. I'm rocking a kind of Princess Diana look at the moment. But we're just going to run through what we've titled Playing in the Realm of the Minds, Humour and Playfulness in Social Cognition. And as Maria said, this relates to a chapter in the book Revealing Hidden Potentials, Assessing Cognition in Individuals with Congenital Deafblindness, that was published earlier on. My name is Jonathan Reid. I'm the national coordinator for something called the See Here strategy, which is a Scottish government strategy which considers all sensory loss across Scotland. And I work at the Health and Social Care Alliance in Glasgow in Scotland. But I have a background working with Sense Scotland, where Jacky works. And I've worked in the field of congenital deafblindness for about 20 odd years now. And I'm also the coordinator for the Nordic Cognition Network in relation to deafblindness. And part of what we're going to talk about today will relate a bit to some of the learning and the information that's come out of the master's course in communication and congenital deafblindness from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. I graduated from that master's course in 2014. Jacky?
Okay, so my name's Jacky Smith, and as John was saying, I work for Sense Scotland. I'm a communication development practitioner. My background when I first started with Sense Scotland, which was about 25 years ago now, was I worked supporting people who are deafblind in their own homes. So that was hands-on support. Now I work in a project called Partners in Communication, and that's all about inclusive communication. So that's about supporting people who have complex communication support needs and thinking about inclusive communication in all its forms. And as part of that work, I'll describe Kate, who who we worked with in this project that we're going to describe. Kate, she's deafblind. She lives in her own home with support, and she is one of the people that I started supporting 25 years ago. She loves wine, she loves chocolate, she loves her family, she loves cheese, and it's not always in that order. It can be in lots of different orders, and she's often described as having a great sense of humour. And as John talked about, then we contributed a chapter to the book Revealing Hidden Potentials, Assessing Cognition in Individuals with Congenital Deafblindness. And our chapter is chapter 2, Humour and Playfulness within Social Cognition, if you want to find it. That's our one. And I've just put up a slide here about how our chapter fits with the assessment framework within the book. And really we were thinking about naturalistic observations and a bit of semi-structured observation, and we'll talk a little bit about what kind of structure we did have for our observations. So in some ways the way that we observed was structured, but what we were doing was quite naturalistic, and it was more about getting an impression than actually measuring something or testing an idea and a hypothesis. I've just put in there where we fit on that framework. And today, in today's discussion, we're going to talk about the project that we detailed in the chapter, where we use play, humour, and the aesthetic space, which John is going to explain about, to enable us to reveal cognitive potentials for Kate. So we're going to talk about how we arranged the environment so we could give the best chance of seeing Kate's cognitive potentials. We really wanted to reveal her potentials and sort of be able to lift her up and shine a light on her and give her the best opportunity to show the potentials that we know that she has. And then we're going to talk about the theories behind how play, humour and aesthetic space relate to cognition, so how that all fits together in our heads. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we saw during the project. We'll just take a small, tiny bit of what we saw and what we learned and explain how that all fits together. And our starting point here was that, it's been suggested that the study of humour often reveals complex levels of cognitive processing, highlighting that humour plays a central role in the social development of children. And that was really interesting to us, this idea that humour and cognition were linked, and we maybe hadn't thought about that before. And humour processing, it's also been described as a complex information processing task that depends on cognitive and emotional aspects. And that was really, really exciting for us. I think that this idea about cognitive aspects and emotional aspects all coming together in humour processing. And that was sort of really, I think, what sparked our interest and gave us the impetus to delve into this a little bit further. So John had already developed theories around aesthetic space, and there were clear links between aesthetic space theory, play, and humour. And John is going to talk a little bit more about that, and he's just going to share his screen. So we'll just have a little minute while we change that over.
Okay, so the aesthetic space. Yeah, I'm just really going to start by giving a wee bit of kind of background information to this work. And as I said before, Jacky and I are both alumni of the master's programme in Groningen. And in 2014, my master's in deafblindness and communication focused really on how people relate to and construct each other when they inhabit different roles within their lives. And fundamentally, I kind of explored the idea that if I see myself as a support worker or a care worker, do I then see in front of me somebody who might need care and support? However, if I construct myself in another role, for instance, if I see myself maybe as a musician or as a dancer, for example, maybe would I then see in front of me somebody who could just be a fellow musician or a fellow dancing partner? And I found this quite an intriguing avenue to explore, and the process and the results yielded some sort of stark thinking about the roles, or in psychological terms, the I positions that we inhabit. And by the term I positions, I just really mean, I in a role. So I as dancer, or I as fellow traveller, or I as support worker, or whatever. And also then how we might construct ourselves within these roles in relation to other people. So much in the same way as we might imagine something like a police officer starting her shift wearing a police uniform may walk out into a world of potential criminality and suspicion, it seems that the roles that we inhabit can give rise to a dialogically related perception of the world around us. And when I'm using that phrase dialogically or dialogicality, I'm really just meaning this concept that we can the way that we form our thinking and our construction of the world is related to our past experiences. So, for example, a baby's second smile will forever be dialogically related to its first smile. So these eye positions or roles can also fluctuate, however, and we may well imagine our same police officer stepping effortlessly into another eye position when she happens to bump into her sister on her walk through the community, or later that night, indeed, as she's tucking her children into bed. She will be able to shift roles and shift eye positions quite effortlessly. And for many years, I'd worked as part of Sense Scotland's arts and well-being team, and I'd become really interested in how these eye positions kind of fluctuate within different environments, within different communication partners and dyads. If a deafblind child and a musician from the arts team were involved in drumming together, for example, maybe around a big kettle drum, and they were both feeling the vibration of the drum skin, and they were acutely aware of each other's tempo and rhythms and cadences, then it would be impossible for the musician partner to construct himself outside of the eye position of fellow musician. The musician partner, of course, would be occupied with a subjective and objective narrative in amongst that, but would be engaged fully within the role of I who is drumming with you. And let's look at what Donald Shawn says about this. He says that when good jazz musicians improvise together, they also manifest a feel for their material, and they make on-the-spot adjustments to the sounds they hear. Listening to one another and to themselves, they feel where the music is going and they adjust their playing accordingly. And so in order to measure this, I also began to consider some of the differences between how we construct the other within a communicative relationship. And I looked at imperative and declarative communication within this as well. And we can surmise that as being imperative behavior, as being trying to obtain a change in the world, which is realized by the interaction partner, who is seen as somebody with agency. And that would mean somebody who can do something for you. And so it would be functional, instrumental behavior, maybe somebody bringing you a cup of tea or getting something for you. And also declarative behavior, which is trying to influence the mind of the other, who is not only seen as somebody with agency, but also somebody who can share your ideas and interests. So it seems that we can kind of construct the other within a communicative relationship, either as a useful tool of functionality for the world, somebody who can help you to achieve a goal, to eat, to travel, to make coffee, and so on. And sometimes this is called an I-it perspective, or within a deeper and a more kind of harmonious construct, where in the communication partner can really be seen as a kind of fellow traveler and can come alongside and share aspects of the world with you. And this is sometimes called an I-you perspective. And one of the challenges that the field of deafblindness faces is to travel from imperative to declarative spaces within our communication relationships with deafblind people. And in terms of optimizing the conditions and the environment for this to happen, I then went on to develop what I termed the aesthetic space. Now, the term aesthetics has been kind of hijacked in recent years and has come to mean our appreciation of a beautiful sunset, for example, or a favored reaction to a perceived visual stimuli. However, the etymology of the term aesthetics is actually derived from the Greek word aesthetikos, meaning to bring the world in through the senses. And let's have a look at how Mark Johnson considers the field of aesthetics within embodied cognition. And he writes that we need a philosophy that sees aesthetics as not just about art, beauty, and taste, but rather as how human beings experience and make meaning. Aesthetics concerns all of the things that go into meaning: form, expression, communication, qualities, emotion, feeling, value, purpose, and more. So for the aesthetic space model, which I looked at using within my master's research, I could then establish several criteria. And this really is detailing what I constructed as being the aesthetic space for my work. A space in which one can observe oneself in action and be observed by others. An intersubjective space between two or more brains or minds. A space of potential and improvisation. It's to do with emotion and a declarative space. An evolving process of adaptation to the other. A space explored through the senses. And finally, a space of imagination and creativity. And I'm now going to show a kind of short piece of film which really captures the above elements. And this film proved to be a bit of an inspiration for Jacky and me when we started our journey in terms of developing a playful framework for our work with Kate, which Jacky will come on to a bit later for our project. The film clip is of two people dancing together, and no language or formal language is used, but they're constantly moving and improvising with each other, and they're managing to share a deep and intersubjective and coordinated level of meaning together. And so cognitively, they're working hard to construct and reconstruct various potentials in a very beautiful aesthetic space encounter. One of the dance partners is a 38-year-old man who's a very skilled dancer and works professionally in the field of contact improvisation. And the other dance partner is his 2-year-old daughter. So let's have a look at an aesthetic space encounter. And as we look at this, we can maybe just have a think about the two minds that are interplaying together and how their relationship is constructed and reconstructed on an ongoing basis. Okay, so I think a pretty successful communicative episode and sharing of the minds going on there. So within the upcoming presentation, Jacky and I are really going to explore how we used aspects of what I've talked about to optimize a playful frame in which we could assess cognition by analyzing humour. And we worked with Kate in Scotland, a deafblind woman in her 30s, and Jacky is now going to share her screen and talk a bit more about the project.
So thinking about the aesthetic space then, so what I took from that and from the aesthetic space and my reading is it involves two or more minds, it's to do with emotion, and it's an evolving process of adaptation to the other. And that led us on then to think about social cognition and how that fits in to the aesthetic space. So when we were looking at social cognition, which can be defined as cognition involving others, we looked at what De Jager, De Pilo and Sean Gallagher talked about in 2010, which said that following embodied approaches, we take social cognition to involve the know-how that allows us to sustain interactions, form relationships, understand each other and act together. And we thought that in order for us to see this, there needs to be a partner. So this is all about social cognition then under this description doesn't happen with someone on their own. Social cognition happens with other people. So there needs to be a partner and in order to see it. And we thought by providing playful partners, it might be possible to assess cognitive abilities, so to assess social cognition in that way. So we thought, how do we arrange an environment that does this? So we thought the most important aspect of the environment was actually us. So we thought a really important aspect was going to be what's our attitude, our mindset, you know, what we brought to an encounter, all the things that John has talked about how we see ourselves and how we see the other person. And we knew that there was something about what we were expecting and that would affect what we could see. So we thought about how we could do that. So in order to help us do that, in order to create an environment that would support that, when we had our sessions together with Kate, we had those sessions in an art room. We wanted a space which didn't have any connotations really about a task that needed to be completed. We could have went and been with Kate in her own home, but that might have had for all of us connotations about maybe we're here to do a cooking project or something that had an end, an end designed to it, but we didn't want to do that. And we wanted to think about actions in novel combinations, because Bateson talked about that being part of playfulness and humour, that novel combinations would help with that. And we knew that interactions had to be through the tactile modality. That's the way that Kate communicates, the way that Kate expresses herself. Everything is through the tactile modality for her. So that had to be foremost in our minds as well. And we wanted to have clowning and teasing throughout the sessions. So we kept that in our minds as something we wanted to do. And I'll go on to talk about clowning and teasing in a little bit. And we wanted to bring in big body movements and rhythms, and we thought this might help support anticipation in a tactile way, that if we use big movements, then this would support that. And we had no aim, no outcome in our heads. We thought it was really important. We wanted to have fun and we wanted to be with the other person. We wanted to have those meetings of minds and those that togetherness and emotion and real connection and real authentic connection. And that's what we were aiming for in line with the aesthetic space model. And we really aim to be engaged. So when we're writing up this project, and when we were being together in the project, we did a lot of reading of Vasu Reddy, who's a professor in a university in England, and she talks about minds, and she sees minds as transparent with an active, emotionally engaged perception. So again, it was this idea that direct emotional engagement, she says the minds of partners in an interaction are made transparent through direct emotional engagement, and we thought that that was a really important thing to take on in this project, that we would try and be directly emotionally engaged, although that's such a hard thing to say today. Now we shall be directly emotionally engaged, but we had this in our head that this is what we would try and do. And we thought engagement and emotion are closely linked, and we thought if there was real, authentic emotional connection, then this would support the assessment of cognition. And this isn't really something that we'd thought about before, but we thought that this would work. And just like in bodily emotional traces or bets, we felt that the emotion in this case, shared emotion, was crucial. I think sometimes we can forget about the emotion aspect of bodily emotional traces. And just if you haven't come across bets before, it's when you share an emotional experience or activity and it leaves a bodily sensory trace, this can be expressed as a bodily emotional trace localized in the body where it was sensed. And the example that I'm thinking of just now is when I get to hug my mother, who I haven't seen because of lockdown here in Scotland for 8 months, that when I give her the biggest hug and squeeze in the world, that's going to leave a really emotional trace on my body that I'll be able to feel for a long time to come. So, bearing all those things in mind and thinking about the aesthetic space and about emotion and connection, and we had a look at some theories about humour and funniness and what that actually meant. So Reid, Williams and Vaughan, they talk about typically developing infants from around 8 months begin to engage in clowning, and they define clowning as repeating acts to re-elicit laughter from others. So doing something funny a few times in order to make someone laugh, doing something funny. So we're going to have a little look here of an example of that. And here's some lovely Scottish children doing something funny in order to make each other laugh. Oh, that's disappeared. There we go. So we can see there that they were very successful there in their clowning, that they were making each other laugh, making themselves laugh, making me laugh watching it there. So that was an example then of clowning. So also there's teasing. So again, Reid, Williams and Vaughan, they talk about teasing developing around 8 months as well. And they define teasing, it can be some different things. So it can be engaging in acts which violate newly developed shared understandings. So someone's learned something and then they change it, they tweak it, they do it in a different way. Or something which provokes prohibition from others. So you do something because you know the other person is going to make a comment about it, or give you a gentle row about it, something like that, or causes disruption to ongoing actions of others. So we're going to have just some short examples of those. So here is quite a famous clip. so causing disruption to ongoing actions of others, but in order to make somebody laugh. Now, this clip, I'm just going to move on a little bit, otherwise it's got very jarring music at the start. So, funny baby teasing mom. Here we go. Okay, so that was the baby then offering his mum the pen and then pulling it back when she goes to grab it, and that's a classic sort of baby toddler teasing strategy, and as you can see, the baby was finding that very, very funny, and it goes on doing that for quite some time in the full video. So Reid talked about teasing being based on the awareness of another's intentions, and talked about involves playing in the realms of minds. So, and infant teasing not only reveals what infants know about others' embodied intentions and expectations, but reveals a powerful process of exploration by the infant of the nature and boundaries of minds, others as well as their own. So Reid and Meryl, they talk a lot then about what this teasing means for cognition, and if someone is teasing, what that must mean about their understanding. They also discuss incongruity humour, and they suggest that the understanding of this type of humour requires the awareness of a norm or a typical pattern which has been violated. So, and it relies on the enjoyment of surprise. So for incongruity humour, the success of this type of humour, it relies on an understanding of the playful frame. So that's, you know, about this, that the playful frame and the aesthetic space is that the sort of anything goes, and things aren't serious that happen within that space. So for the surprise to be funny, everyone involved needs to know that the context is a playful one. Therefore, observing laughter in response to incongruity can be a way of assessing cognition, in that it demonstrably reveals an understanding of the playful frame. So if we watched something and we didn't understand that it was playful, we might be worried about things that happened. But if we understand that it's playful, then we find it amusing and funny. So I'm going to give an example here, and this is a very famous TV show in the UK, and this is a very famous clip for it. And I'm just going to move it on a little bit here. We don't need all of it. Okay, I'm going to have it from here.
I think we're on a winner here, Trig. All right, play it nice and cool, son. Nice and cool, you know what I mean?
So in that clip, something happened that we knew wasn't the thing that they intended to happen, but we also knew that it wasn't serious. We knew that no one was hurt there. We knew that what we were watching was a setup. But it's a lovely little funny clip. I say it's very famous in Britain. So we'd found out these things about humour and how we thought they would relate to cognition and different types of humour, the clowning and the teasing, and how we might look for those things and bring those into the sessions. So we, for the project, we had about a dozen sessions with Kate, and we videoed each session, and after each session we watched recordings of the session together. And what we did, we just set up the video camera in the corner and just left it running. Some sessions there was the three of us, some sessions there was just John, some sessions there was just me, some sessions one of us would join halfway through, just whatever we could manage that week. When we watched back the video, we were really interested in the times when we were all laughing together. We found that for us, it was a real shortcut to finding the moments of connectedness, the moments of engagement, and the moments that were really authentic. And if we were all laughing, that really gave us a really good indication that there was something there to see, and then it gave us the best chance of looking for cognition and seeing what cognition was coming rising up. And we watched them, and we started to think about and talk about and look at analysing what had led to laughter. And we asked ourselves if we could see any actions which we thought could illustrate Kate's social cognitive abilities. And then we discussed ways that these could be built on in future sessions. So I'm just going to look at one example here of a time when we were all laughing together. We're just going to look at the stills from it, and then I can take you through it and explain it a little bit. So it's Kate and me in these stills. And this was session 4 in the project. So we felt that it was well established about the aesthetic space and the playful frame, you know, that our expectations, Kate's expectations were, we had an idea of what these sessions were all about by this point. And I just have to say that I'm going to talk about biting here, and just so I don't have to say it every single time, it's pretend biting, okay? And no one was actually bitten in the course of any of the projects that we did, and I don't generally bite anybody most days. So, and there was definitely no biting here, and I definitely didn't bite Kate. So it's not often I have to give that disclaimer, I have to say, when I'm doing the presentation. I'm sure you're very relieved to know that. So here we are. So I'm sitting on the ground here. We'd started sitting on the bench behind us, myself and Kate, but we'd ended up sitting on the floor. This was something that we did quite often. Kate can really feel the vibrations from my body when I'm laughing and moving. She was really comfortable in that position. As I say, we've known each other for about 25 years now, so this was a comfortable thing for us to do. We'd been making some really big movements. We'd been stretching up and moving our arms down, and because we thought that might, you know, help with cognition and having ideas about communication. So we were doing all that, and also we, for every session, we had some objects sitting on the table, and we would explore those objects. And we had a rough theme that the objects would be round, and that was sort of the most structured thing that we did in this. So it's hard to see here, but Kate has an orange in this hand here, and she has an apple in this hand here. And these were just objects that had been sitting on the table and we'd been exploring, and she kept them in her hand when we moved down to the floor. So she's obviously finding them quite interesting, otherwise she would have just dropped them. And at this point, I am moving Kate's left hand up towards my mouth, and I'm blowing on the back of it, and I'm pretending to bite it. So I'm moving it towards her hand, towards my mouth, and I'm blowing on it so that she knows that her hand's coming up towards my mouth, and then when it gets really close and I'm maybe putting my lips on it and and pretending to bite it, then she's pulling it away really quickly. So and laughing and really, really laughing. And just we're both really enjoying the interaction. I'm laughing, she's laughing, John's behind the camera and he's laughing as well. And we're just having fun doing this together, this anticipation, this rhythm, sort of just really into and connected in doing this thing. So we've done that a few times. And then this time here, in my head, I'm thinking I'm going to do the same thing. We're still having fun doing this. I'm going to pretend to bite the back of Kate's hand. But Kate here, she starts turning her hand slightly. She starts turning her hand so that I'm not presented with the back of her hand at my mouth. I'm now presented with the apple that she's holding in her hand at my mouth, as if Kate is saying to me, haha, don't bite my hand anymore. This will be funny. Have the apple to bite. And so here, I'm going with it. I'm just going with the flow, and I bite the apple and we laugh and we have a chat about that. So in this just short series of stills, this is what we think we saw. So teasing. So when Kate offers me the apple, we think that that's, you know, she's teasing me. For it to be teasing, there has to be a violation. It must have the intention to provoke emotional reaction. So for it to be teasing, Kate must have done it in order to provoke an emotional reaction. And we feel that that's what happened there. It can be seen that Kate violated the planned action. So my planned action was for me to bite her on the back of the hand, and that she did this with the intention of provoking laughter, of making us laugh, because then that's exactly what happened. We were laughing, and we were totally in that moment and just enjoying the humour. And for us, it suggests some really complex cognitive processing and social understanding on Kate's part. So she must have understood that the context of the situation is a playful one. I mean, she was laughing when I was pretending to bite the back of her hand, you know, and normally if I just bumped into her in the street and started doing that, then she wouldn't have found that amusing, I'm pretty sure. So we really think that she understood the context because of the way that it had been built up over the weeks. And she must have understood that I had a plan to bite her hand. And she must herself have planned how she would thwart or disrupt my plan with the intention of being funny. So this is our beliefs about what was happening here, that she was doing all those things. So from that, we can say that the elements of cognition that we saw was the understanding of the social situation, the specific understanding of the playful frame, and it was an anything goes sort of situation, that she understood the intention in the mind of another person, and she made a plan for how to disrupt this intention, and that was with the aim of causing amusement, of being funny. It wasn't, I don't like Jacky biting the back of my hand, I need to stop her doing it. It was, what can I add to this humorous situation, we believe. And if we look again at social cognition and what we said about that, if we take that social cognition to involve the know-how that allows us to sustain interactions, form relationships, understand each other and act together, then we really think that that we could see social cognition happening, and that's what we demonstrated within the project. And I want to have a little final word about engagement. Reid again, she describes engagement as allowing a felt response to specific aspects of mind, and that allow development of a mutuality of expanding actions, response and exploration. And For her, engagement cannot be forced and is not a feature of the amount of interaction in an encounter, but rather concerns the quality of emotional interaction. And we felt that that was such an important aspect of this project and how we'd been interacting together, that it was the quality of the emotional interaction that had made it so powerful. I think for me, and I think for John as well, we felt really connected throughout this project, throughout the sessions. And we did, I feel, manage to throw away all those ideas of us knowing best or us being the person that was the most capable or the more capable within this situation. And we really felt that we were in something together. And that's what I will really take away from this project, this emotional engagement and the quality of the emotional interactions within it. And I have some references here. You can get hold of the slides after, and if you want to do any further reading on anything that I've talked about then, or John's talked about then, there's references here. And that is the end of the presentation. Two minutes early, it's never been known before.
Thank you so much, John and Jacky. And we have been talking about this project many times, and I always get back to what you ended up with, Jacky, that this will never leave you, the emotional engagement and the traces that you have spared within you. I think that's so nice to hear every time. And I will also say welcome to John and Jacky, of course, but also to Saskia, Damen from the Netherlands, Vuokko Einarsson from Sweden, and Kirsten Costain from Norway. We are now going to have a kind of reflection around this presentation, but I would like to start with a question, because we received one exactly when we went for our break. Is humor, in your definition, always linked with laughter, or are there other ways to see humor in deafblind people? I thought it was a very good start within this part of the webinar. And I don't really know which one of you who just want to grab the microphone and say something about it. Maybe John and Jacky for first.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I read that, and I think from Alexander, and I think it's a really perceptive question, actually, because it kind of drives right to the heart of what Jacky and I were exploring, really. And I think, you know, the answer for me is that I don't think it is always linked with laughter at all. And there's some debate that we can look at around whether the act of laughter is learnt behavior or something innate and natural within us and all of that. But really, Jacky and I looked at the contextualized picture. And so we were looking at this playful frame, or this aesthetic framework. And within that framework, then we look at the aspects of humor that Jacky ran through in terms of incongruity humor, or, you know, this mismatch of things. And I would almost argue that you know, purposefully within a playful framework, purposefully mismatching or doing something out of the ordinary. I have a 2-year-old daughter who quite often wanders through with her pants on her head, for example. Doing something like that is a humorous act within the aesthetic space, within a playful framework. Jacky?
Yeah, I would agree, John, that it's not necessarily about laughter. It is about the intention to do something amusing. It's about the intention, I think, but someone may find something amusing, but they wouldn't necessarily be expressing that through laughter. They might be expressing that in lots and lots of different ways. And some of that will be a challenge then for us as the supporter, as the person that's joining the person on that journey for us to have the skills about observing that and thinking, what is this person? How are they expressing and what's happening to them just now? Are they finding something funny, or is something else going on? But I think because we the people that we support, we can get really in tune with them sometimes, and when we are with them, and so I think we probably know when someone's finding something amusing, but it is more difficult because we can't catch someone's eye and share a look, or but there's other ways, I think, of seeing that.
Thank you. And we have received some more questions, but I think we will start with Saskia. Do you have some short reflections that you have been thinking of?
Just one thing about the former question. Sometimes something can become humorous by talking it over again and again, and also to maybe other people who suddenly respond to it as like, wow, what happened? Really, this is amazing. And the story can even become better and better when you retell it again and again, I think. What I wanted to reflect on when I watched your presentation, thank you very much, by the way, for this wonderful presentation, is that I think it's really a good example of semi-structured assessment. Even though maybe if people hear this story for the first time, they don't see it as assessment, but I think it's a really good example of how we can do assessment in our professional practice, working with people with deafblindness, and really looking at cognition, because I think we're very much used to have the lens on communication, interaction, but you put it into another frame and really looked at social cognitive aspects like imagination, taking the perspective of the other, how she understands the situation, that kind of things. And what you did is that you had a certain plan before you started, but it was not a very structured plan. It was, you were setting this playful frame, and I think you were thinking about what a situation is a good situation to start building this or developing this playfulness, but also what does she need? But also you were thinking, I think, about what you would need as a communication partner in order to be able to take that role of a playful companion. So that was the thing that you set up. And then after that, it just happened. There was not a specific structure that you used. You had a mat, you had some materials, but not other things. So I think that that shows how you don't need to arrange something very complicated, but it is good to think beforehand what could be the things that are necessary to create this setting. So I really like it as an example of semi-structured assessment.
Thank you for that, Saskia. And then before we go any further, I would put in a question we have received, because it connects to what you reflected on, Saskia. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, and it was also funny for all of us. We were laughing. But you showed us Kate is a social cognitive and fundamental cognitive potentials, especially her ability to understand a plan and the plan of another through the bodily-tactile modality. Amazing. Now is the question here then. Have you any thoughts on how you could expand or enhance her planning abilities in other situations?
Well, I think for me, we shared all the learning from this project with the people that are supporting Kate sort of day to day, and it was useful just for us and for that team to know that how far her planning could go, you know, and how many steps ahead. We sort of gave an idea of how many steps ahead she was thinking and planning and acting. So that might, we felt that might help them, you know, when they're talking about different situations with her, and when the situation's coming up, that they would be able to use that to sort of tailor the information that they give her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things in there for me. I mean, for just going back to the last thing Saskia said, and I'm going to horribly misquote somebody here, and my apologies. I think it was Reid and Weinman, but there was a quote which was to do with having space which allows, props that invite, and something like places which smile, or something like that. And for me, there's something in this about the communicative kind of dyad, and it goes back to those roles that people play again. And really, Jacky and I's journey, which is of equal importance to Kate's journey within this communicative picture that we've seen, and Jacky alluded to it, we kind of became authentically ourselves the more the sessions went on, and the better we kind of got to know each other. And so in a way, what my advice is about that is really about looking inwards, about do I see myself as somebody who is here to be on shift with somebody that finishes in 2 hours, and I'm needing to get the tea done, and I need to make sure the safety's all involved. You know, of course, that's very important, but there also needs to be oxygen for these other components or aspects of the self to become authentic within that relationship. And I think that would be my response to that in order to optimize and grow the potentials for this, then it's let's send our staff on clowning courses or musicians courses or whatever it might be. Let's see what happens.
Thank you, John and Jacky. And now I would like to say welcome to you, Kirsten, if you want to share some of your reflections. And I have pointed out the question from your participants. Thank you so much, and we will get back to it soon. But first, some thoughts from you, Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I've seen it before and I've thought about it before, but I still found myself writing 4 more pages of notes when I was watching it, which for me is success. I always I find it very interesting and very, at the same time, very difficult to talk about one aspect or 2 aspects, but because they all hang together so well. But this thing of arranging a setting instead of determining what's going to happen or following a method, we teaching types tend to be very into having a plan. And in a way, you have this lovely plan, but it's a setting. So the plan is in the setting, and it's not set in stone, and it therefore gives space for this authentic mutuality and reciprocity to develop. Otherwise, it would be you doing this and seeing what would happen, and which is also an okay way to proceed in other settings. But this kind of structured activity, semi-structured activity that is more about arranging a setting is really deceptively simple. It's not simple actually to use it well, because you have to be willing to sort of let maybe nothing happen. And in my experience, there's always something happening, even when nothing, and sometimes especially when nothing is happening. But we do tend to underestimate that experience when we work intensely with people with congenital deafblindness. It can feel often that, you know, what are we doing? But I really love this. I think you've used Johnson and Reid and a number of other people I recognize from my own work, and that I think many of us use in this field, about embodied cognition. And it's not just Kate's embodied cognition, but the embodiment of cognition and intersubjectivity in the relationships between you, which are, when we talk about embodiment, we're talking about movement, we're talking about non-strictly cognitive in the cognitivist sense, processes, but which in an embodied cognitive perspective, like Gallagher's, for example, who you also quote, cognition is about awareness at different levels. So a reflective cognitive perspective is more to do with what we traditionally think of as thinking with language and concepts and so on. But what we mostly do all the time is a kind of aware, embodied interaction with ourselves and with other people and with the world around us. And this metaphor as a sort of central modus to move between this imperative sense, this instrumentality of, okay, I need this, so I'll do that, to the declarative, which is where the relationship comes in, where the humor comes in, where the engagement comes in. That is, so that's both a meta process, but it's also a process that happens in the tiny little details. So when you talk about sitting I'll just mention this because this, I hope, will make this more clear. You're sitting at the table first. We don't see that here, and you have this topic of roundness and objects and so on. And there are these two pieces of fruit that are more or less the same shape. And when you start on the floor, she's holding, if I remember correctly, her hands are out more or less the same sort of thing, and around the same kinds of objects in the same kind of way. And that's a beautiful example of a kind of embodied cognitive measuring, an embodied, and she's not necessarily thinking, measuring, or exploring, or anything. She's maybe not, but her whole body is measuring these two things, and in a way that she's setting them in the same category as two roundish things that are like this and about like that, and I can hold them like this. So if we look at how people with congenital deafblindness actually use their hands, we often see a lot of the sort of cognitive measuring processes that we all do as we move through the day. And then later on, of course, you treat her hand as though it was an apple, which is a metaphorical thing, treating something like something else. And she effortlessly clicks over to, no, that's me or my hand and not an apple. So have an apple. No. And so there are lots of categories there that she's aware of, that she knows how things fit, and she can take that improvised response in a very quick way, in a very natural way. And I also, just to finish, like the idea that you emphasize your own embodied experience in the whole thing, because that is the engagement part. Engagement is about that genuine, authentic feeling of what's created, and that true reciprocity, because you're as moved by it as she is. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kirsten. And you highlighted Kate's cognitive skills, and then I will put forward a question. Thank you for your presentation. Do you translate the cognitive skills you are using, humor, and then seeing in the child or adult who is deafblind into developmental levels to parents as part of your assessment? And in that case, how? I think you, John and Jacky, are free to answer, but maybe some of you others also have experiences from that. But maybe John or Jacky, do you want to start?
Sure. So for Kate, really we explained and we put together a little report about what we'd been doing, and we put that to her parents and the team that support her, and we really just explained, as we've explained it today, about what was happening, what we did, and then what we felt that we could see from that, and just sort of put that out there to in the terms that we've been talking about today. And we didn't think anything like developmental levels or anything like that. We just talked about it in sort of everyday language, what we thought was happening in the situations that we'd had together, and kind of just left it at that for other people if they wanted to interpret that in a different way. Does that make sense?
You highlighted her cognitive skills then as well.
Yes.
Yes.
I think just really briefly to add to that as well. I mean, part of, I think the kind of the wider narrative that often happens in you know, in residential places or whatever, in places that people work, is it's quite often said that, oh, you know, so and so has a really good sense of humor, or someone's really funny, and you know that this comes out quite often. In a way, what I think this can hopefully do is kind of pin down that a bit and say, well, what would that mean actually? Because if that is the case, then there are real potentials here for cognitive strategies that are happening all over the place. So, you know, in a way, yeah, I think there's probably some more we can do around that.
I can add something, because I had experience with an intervention we did with video feedback. And we really, at a certain moment during the intervention, there were lovely moments of also with humor. And we saw this person with congenital deafblindness telling things that were not true, deliberately, also to joke. And then, of course, the other person asked, is this a joke or not? And it appeared to be a joke, and they were laughing a lot. And that was really an amazing moment, because there was this report, actually, a psychological report on this person that said he was not able to do such things. He was not able to take the perspective of the other person. He was not able to communicate declaratively. So it was really amazing that we had this on tape, because that was really something that came out of this intervention. And that made us say, okay, but this report, it's not correct. We have to change that. So that actually helped us to get a better understanding of this person's potentials, and also was an inspiration for other people to interact with this person in a totally different way than they were used to do.
I think that's a fantastic example. Yeah, and some of that is then about our willingness to see that and to recognise then that what the person was saying wasn't true, but it wasn't just that they were mistaken, or that they were doing it in order to be funny. And yeah. I think that's one of the things that about, you know, a change in our mindset. Because of the pandemic here in Scotland, I've been doing a bit more work directly with people who are deafblind, and I was supporting someone who I'd never met, who I'd met before but never worked with, in their own home, just out of necessity a few weeks ago. And there was a detailed way that he supported to make tea. So I was supporting them to make tea, and we made the tea, and then we were putting the milk away, and instead of the milk going in the fridge, the milk went in the kitchen cupboard. And I thought, well, I can think of this in some different ways. I can think, oh my goodness, this poor 50-year-old man has never learned where the milk goes, and he's made a mistake here. Or I can think, maybe this person is wondering, who is this new person, and what are they like, and what are they going to do if I put the milk in the cupboard? And so I decided that it was going to be a huge big deal, that, oh my goodness, is this what happens with the milk in this house? Is this what we do? And I think it was like a shortcut to, okay, and I know what kind of person you are. And after that, he was doing splits in the kitchen and showing off to me and things. And we sized each other up by that, recognizing what was going on here. And it can be a really useful tool, but I think it's about our mindset to recognize it.
Yeah, and just to say, Jack, and obviously, yeah, those kind of I positions that we talked about, because as a wonderful recent author of a chapter on humour in a book about this very subject, that I position was prominent in you to be able to recognise maybe in an asset-based way the cupboard is to do with this or whatever, and that might not be the case in a brand new staff member, for example, that started. So there's options here to widen the knowledge of it.
Yes, thank you. Now I would like to say welcome to you, Vuokko. Do you have some thoughts you want to share with us?
Thank you. I would like to say, first of all, thank you to both of you. I think it was really nice, and I think it's interesting to put it in this frame, just to be interested in what kind of cognition you can see when you use this frame of humor. And I think in assessment, if you see humor, you try to pinpoint it, because it's such a important social way of communication. So when we see it, I think we always should pinpoint it. And often I think parents always tell us their child is joking, and he has a good sense of humor. And they, I have these kind of stories from children I met and their parents, and I think it's really lovely. And I think as you thought, Saskia, I think this was a really nice structured, semi-structured intervention you did. And I think it's really difficult to do this in some way. And you have been thinking a lot, and you told me, and the only thing you were after in some way, just having fun. And I think that's really difficult to come there. So I think how you told us this presentation, I really think you succeeded in many ways. I think it was really nice to see and hear. And I think you saw a lot of social cognition here, imitation and shared attention, and a lot of engagement. You had a lot of attention from Kate, and for a long time, you were together for a long time and having a nice time for such a long time. And this theory of mind, some kind of mentalization, and of course, humor can be on different levels. You can be, and I think this was really nice because you could see that you were doing it on a different levels all the time. And I think it was, she showed a lot of concepts too. She know teasing, even if she had the concept of teasing. And I think it's, that was really beautiful.
Thank you, Vuokko. Now I think that Kirsten want to say something, and then I would like to add a question from the participants.
Maybe we should go to a question. We could do that.
We could do that, and then you can come back later.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
Yes. So then this is a question for Jacky and John. Did you have any occasions when Kate initiated repetition of her previously successful playfulness? If so, how did you differentiate between her wanting to repeat the experience and possibly take it further, rather than her reflecting on or thinking about what had happened before? And if you didn't differentiate, does it matter? John and Jacky, who wants to start? John, please.
We didn't detail or show this particularly in today's presentation, but during the course of the work, as Jacky said, I mean, there was a sort of sequential process to it, right? And so sometimes Jacky would be working with Kate, and then I'd come in a bit later, or sometimes we were both there together, or sometimes I was there and Jacky would come in later. And so sometimes what happened naturally was this kind of sequential passing on of the narrative about what had happened, either from week to week or within the session itself at a kind of micro level or a macro level. And so there were times then where the story might have been, for example, you know, the apple falls off the table onto the floor, for example, something like that. And we might play with that picture, that narrative, and it might then roll down someone's body, and it might fall a very long way or a very short way, and Jacky might then come in, and we would see then if it would be retold or recycled in a way, and things like that. And often then what happened was, if Jacky had started that story and I'd come in, we might kind of enlarge or exaggerate the story along the lines of bets and traces, Jacky, as you mentioned earlier. So I'm remembering one time, for example, where I think my shoes were off or something like that had happened. I'm going back a few years now, Jacky. And yeah, we were doing all of this stuff, you know. So there was a way of both watching to see if the process of retelling the story had come out there, and also if it had been exaggerated or adapted to be told in another way to another third partner in the moment. Yeah. Do
you want to add something, Jacky, or just agree?
And we think that the story of the apple and the biting of the apple, there's a sequence then the next week when John and Kate are together, that there's a situation where they're sitting on the bench, and Kate is the round objects that they'd been exploring were a pom-pom and a sponge. So Kate had two round things in her hands, which we felt was sort of mirroring the way that she'd had the tangerine and the apple. And then she's sitting next to John, and then she moves around a bit so that her back is more towards John, but not right, but a little bit more. And then she bites the back of her own hand that's holding the sponge. And then she does it again, and then John starts talking about something biting here, and then talking about biting, and we think that that's telling John the story about what happened, and possibly, you know, how bad I was and that I bit her, and telling, you know, really getting me in trouble, and telling John all about it, you know, and we loved that, you know, like watching that, like, oh, Jacky bit me last week, John, it was awful, you know. So we really cherish those moments where that's happening, and try and respond, you know. But there was a lot of themes that did keep coming back throughout the project, these round things, dropping things, as John was talking about, you know, the big movements. And for me, it was always just being in contact with Kate and feeling how her movements were going, feeling if her hands were moving up or moving down, or if she wanted to stand up, and trying to be really attuned to her and just follow her lead to see where things were going.
I could just maybe add, I'm remembering as well, like when I was speaking earlier, I'd mentioned this term dialogicality or dialogism, and Perlinel has developed 3 rules for that, which is joint attention, something called activity, interdependence, and sequentiality, and so you know, joint attention, you know, those 3 rules were present, so that, you know, we were both jointly attentive over something, and in terms of intersubjective behavior. The activity, interdependence, this happened, the act was appropriate and happened within this art room where we had been before, and it was sequential, so we were building on narratives of the past, and so those 3 things kind of traveled with us as well through the project, and we could probably, if we looked at those in more detail, we could say that they were built upon and scaffolded by all 3 of us as we went through the project together as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I should add something here, Maria.
Yes, please do, Kirsten, please do.
But I think it's good you mentioned Linnell, because we're talking about this kind of transformation thing that happens through repetition, and the idea of recycling is an idea. There are different ways of looking at that. One strain comes from conversation analysis, and the idea that you have a conversation has a progression that depends on repeating things, but not in a kind of rote way, but in a way that changes, that every repetition anyway is always an imperfect one, even when one is trying to repeat something perfectly, exactly like it was before. It will never be the same. But in a conversation about a topic, we have ways of returning to the topic and changing that topic that develop the topic. So we don't leave the topic, we don't go somewhere else, but we do get somewhere else by going in a kind of spiral mode up around the topic through, we might have a theme like roundness and dropping and so on, and then we have reams or ways of slightly altered versions of that topic, and that add more things to it. So there's a thing here that I think when we were talking about levels and developmental levels and so on, I do think that play and playfulness as a profoundly metaphorical kind of activity signals that kind of sophistication. So, you know, Kate will not be able to do all kinds of linear things that involve putting 2 and 2 together, literally, but she is capable of an amazing amount of sophistication in a completely other direction, which isn't this more kind of metaphorical, recycling, transformative, spiral kind of movement. So it's that's probably pretty incomprehensible the way I'm describing it myself. But there is this this lovely thing. I mean, I love the stories about all the ways she takes these two similar things and the drop them. I mean, she makes up a new version of different stories on the back of various themes, and that's I think we recognize that from a great many people that we've worked with, all of us.
Thank you. And we have some comments in the chat, and I will ask Nina to just pay forward the comment from Tanya to all the participants. It's a comment on humor being present without laughing, so you can read it for yourself. And there are also a comment about it's important to highlight the importance of sharing information about these events in detail between different carriers or family members. And that's what exactly was I was thinking when you told us, Jacky, that Kate just did a little bit, change her body, and it could have been looked at in a totally different kind of way if you don't know the context or your strategies, your plans or anything.
Yes, no, I agree that was really important, and we did after each session spoke to the person that was going to be supporting Kate for the rest of that day, and I would say, you know, we were doing this and we were doing this, and I would show the movements and say, this is what we did in this session, and talk about the things that had happened, and say, you know, if you see any of that, then that'll be what she's trying to tell you about. But it's quite difficult, I think, to pass that kind of thing over for someone else to understand, especially when it has been that emotional thing, an emotional experience. Trying to explain it to someone else, I find quite difficult.
Yeah, it's like trying to explain what happened in your body when you went to the rock concert that you really loved. Talk me through each minute of, you know, almost impossible. Yeah, but that's why video is so important.
Yes. It sure is. Someone who want to add something, or maybe just another thought, another reflection? You can feel free. We have some more minutes. If you want to, I think that Kirsten is going. Yeah.
Usually is. I wouldn't mind making this. I think one of the I was thinking the whole time about emotion, motion, motivation. When we're spending time with people with congenital deafblindness, trying to find out what motivates and what will, because all of these words refer to motion, to something that sets something else in motion. Engagement is about movement, and so on. So all of this is about getting things going in a way. And I think that that an incredibly important aspect of that, of course, is expectation, to start setting up creating, you used the term oxygen, John, room and space for Kate to have more complex expectations of her environment, but also for other people to see that they can have more complex expectations of her, and that is alpha and omega, as we say here, in the whole scheme of things. If you don't expect anything to happen from the person you're partnering, nothing's going to happen and you won't see it. But if you and if the person feels they cannot possibly expect anything interesting, I mean, we're talking about very appalling situations, but if they don't think they can expect anything particularly from you, you know, your man in the kitchen there was finding that out very quickly, and I think that's what they often achieve. But yeah, so being able to develop expectations on both sides, that's what I think this shows.
Thank you, Kirsten. Jacky, did you want to add something? No?
I agree absolutely that it's about expectations and having high expectations from ourselves, what we're giving ourselves, and what's coming from other people, and just to keep all that in mind. Yeah.
So I don't think we have received any other question. It's some comments, some thoughts, very valuable, and you can read them as well. And I just look at you, Saskia and Vuokko, if you want to say something more, or do you think everything has been said?
I just want to say that I think these kind of examples are very important because they show, they give a lot of ideas, I think, of how we can do this, how we can create emotional engagement. And at the same time, which is a lovely experience, but at the same time, we do a lot in stimulating development. We bring out potentials. We get a better understanding of who the person is. So we get a lot of information, and it's not complicated at the same time. So I think this is a good example of that. And I know these kind of examples can be very powerful. For example, all the videos we have from the booklets, the communication booklets that were created. This was this international project, like the video on the crab of Gunnar. How many times did we see that? And we enjoyed that so much. And there was also a lot of humor and experience. So, well, I think it's good to keep on collecting these kind of interesting, wonderful examples and to share it with everyone. So yeah, again, I thank you very much for bringing in this example in the book and showing us and presenting this example video.
Yes, I totally agree, Saskia. Vuokko, would you like to say something, or?
I agree also in the last, in all the comments, but I really think it's that it's also something, it's just because it's enjoyable in some way to try to find this, even if you seek for cognition, that's one thing. It's just fun, to have fun, it's important. So I think you get a lot of development just from that. So in the both directions, just to have fun, even if you see a lot there. But I think on a daily basis, I think you really want everyone to have it in some way.
People want to have fun, then we can say. Well, with that, I would like to thank all of you, the panelists and the presenters, John and Jacky, Kirsten, Saskia, and Vuokko. Thank you so much and have a good evening, everyone.